Wolf, are you ready? You ready for this? What's up, everyone? It's Odin Grimm here with another episode of the Bloodmead Sanctum, and this time we're in Ghost Data, and I'm excited. Here is where we talk about video games, and I got a really special one here today, a really huge one that is gonna take a while because, well, it's about the Ghost of Sparta, the legendary Kratos, who has just a long history. He's the slayer of gods, the sinker of Atlantis, so many other names. And in fact, I should have thought about doing this earlier, but my friend Patrick, who is part of the Patreon as a curator of Golden Skulls, he recommended that I do this. And he's like, you should do a little bio on him. And I'm like, oh, sure, I'll do a quick 10 to 15 minute video. And then even then, I still tried to do like a shortened version and not get everything. But I guess I'm kind of like a completionist. I'm cursed with that. And it turned into probably about an hour and a half. So I'm just letting you know, if you need to break it up a little bit, that's fine. I really want to get this out before Ragnarok comes. And it is now Monday, November 7th. And it's coming out tomorrow at about 10 p.m. So I gotta be ready because I'm gonna be streaming that on Twitch at twitch.tv/OdinGrim, and I hope to see you there. I cannot wait. I am so pumped to play Ragnarok. I can't believe it's here, and yeah, just like all the other memes are saying, it's like we are not ready. I'm not ready. Not at all. I'm not worthy of this. And it just came out of the blue. Ugh. I'll be playing it on PS4 for now, but hey, that'll give me something to show and compare to when I finally get that PS5. I just need me a nice sugar mama. So if you're out there, sugar mama, you know, send me $500. I'll give you, you know, all my love, and I will do the dishes and things like that. I'll cook for you. I'll hold the door open, pull the chair out for years until I pay off that $500. And then I'll still be there. Hey, you give me this, I'm yours forever, okay? But yeah, I thought that Patrick's suggestion was a great idea, and yeah, it got out of hand, but we're gonna do it. He has a gargantuan history, a huge story that has been told since 2005. You know, you can't just wrap it up in 10 to 15 minutes faithfully. So I'm gonna try to, you know, explore the themes that have kind of been there since all those years ago, 17 years ago, up until now. So we're going to explore how these things kind of go full cycle, all the cycles of patricide, killing a son, killing their father, and let's hope that we break the cycle here in Ragnarok. All right, and this is about the Ghost of Sparta, and I'm also not doing a green screen. As you can tell, I'm doing it from my bedroom this time instead of somewhere in the Bloodmead Sanctum because, well, technically, on a technical level, the green screen takes about, you know, 8 hours to process just to where I can even start to, like, you know, get it out there to people. And at this point, I didn't think of it soon enough. Thank you, Patrick, for, you know, suggesting I do this video. But yeah, I don't really have the luxury of time right now to just be sitting waiting for the computer for like a work shift to process this shit. We got to get going. So with that said, let me quit rambling, and I hope you enjoyed this story. This is going to follow Kratos from the beginning of his life to where he is now, with a little bit of lore in between and general themes and a little bit of theory crafting at the end. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the most recent God of War to really, you know, see what the stakes are in this game. I want to have all the stakes that Kratos is dealing with at the top of my mind as we get into Ragnarok. So that's our goal here. Let's go. Since 2005, when Kratos first premiered in the original God of War on PS2, there's been 8 games since then. And he has been a commander in the Spartan army to a god of war, from Sparta in Greek mythology to the 9 realms of Norse mythology. He's been all over the place. Obviously, these games are inspired by Greek and later Norse mythology, but it's a beast of a story all on its own. It's its own adaptation. And it's such a huge story. I'm not going to get into every single thing. Like, I really almost started at the primordials, the origin of Greek mythology, the beginning of time, but honestly, it's a bit excessive for our purposes here. So I won't go quite that far, but still, we should start at a time before Kratos was born. So let's head to the first great war between the Titans and the gods of Olympus. Kronos, the Titan representing time, was born to Gaia, Mother Earth, and Uranus, the god of the universe, the sky. As he got older, Kronos came to resent his father and envy his power, and Gaia also became mad at Uranus after he hid away their youngest children, Hecatoncheires and Cyclops, down in Tartarus where they would never see the light of day, and Gaia, out of vengeance, created a huge stone sickle and asked her sons to castrate Uranus. Only Kronos was down for that, to castrate his father, and so he sliced off his father's balls and threw them into the sea. He didn't kill his father, but he basically rendered him irrelevant from that point on. He deposed him. He would later learn from the Sisters of Fate, at least in God of War lore, that he was fated to be overthrown by his children just as he had overthrown his dad. So he started that cycle of patricide. But he and his sister Rhea would produce the gods Hades, Poseidon, Demeter, Hestia, and Hera. Kronos swallowed each of them whole to prevent the prophecy from coming true. When child number 6, Zeus, was born, Rhea went to her mother Gaia for help, not wanting to lose yet another child to her husband's belly. Rhea gave baby Zeus over to Grandma Gaia to care for the child in secret, while Rhea wrapped the Ophilos stone in swaddling clothes, making it look like a baby, and offered it to her husband. Zeus was raised by Gaia, who kept him out of sight from Kronos, while also nurturing Zeus's desire to free his siblings. Unfortunately for Gaia, Zeus wouldn't stop there. He had aspirations to defeat the Titans altogether, including Gaia, and take his father's throne, just as Kronos wanted to do to Uranus. Once he had grown into his prime, Zeus freed his siblings, and then he declared war on the Titans. And this battle raged. Mountains were thrown around like stones, and Greece was engulfed in flames. Eventually, Zeus forged the Blade of Olympus, and with its power he was able to banish the Titans to Tartarus, bringing an end to the First Great War. It was such a brutal conflict that evil itself, fear, anger, resentment, hatred, it was born in the aftermath, which would have destroyed all life if it wasn't immediately dealt with. Zeus managed to concentrate and contain these evils into Pandora's box, but his daughter Athena also put the power of hope inside the box. That way, if it was ever opened again and all these evils were once again unleashed, at least hope would also be released. As for the Titans, some were sent away to Tartarus, but others weren't, and they received other more unique punishments. His father Kronos, for instance, he was cursed to wander forever through the desert of lost souls with Pandora's temple on his back, which was like a fucking mountain, a place of great dangers and pitfalls that was created to test the ability of any mortal who dares search for the box. And after all of the attempts to prevent that prophecy of being overthrown by his children, Kronos eventually was overthrown, making that prophecy come true. Zeus would eventually marry his sister Hera, and he split up the domain of their rule with his brothers Poseidon and Hades. Poseidon would rule the seas and Hades the underworld, and Zeus as the king of the skies and of all the gods of Olympus. Ever the promiscuous type, Zeus wasn't one to be beholden to one woman. Now on to the life and times of Kratos. Kratos was born in Sparta to a woman named Callisto and grew up not knowing who his father was. It would later be revealed to Kratos that he's the bastard son of Zeus. Hera was livid that he had yet another bastard and ordered that Kratos be executed in the childbed, but Zeus mistakenly took pity on the boy and allowed him to be raised in Sparta. As was the custom in Sparta, the youth were examined by leaders of the city, and those who were deemed fit, strong, healthy children they were able to stay and train in Sparta, while those who were deemed unfit would be banished, sent away to the mountains or to the chasms to fend for themselves, essentially being thrown to the wolves. Kratos, he was already an aggressive child with a knack for fighting, and he was deemed fit to stay. He would train alongside his brother Deimos, also a bastard of Zeus, at least in this lore, and they chased their dreams of joining the Spartan army and furthering its glory. Meanwhile, an oracle told Zeus that one of his sons would one day kill him, and that this marked warrior would eliminate all of the Olympians. Now, just like his father, Zeus worked to prevent this from becoming true. He was suspicious of Deimos, who was born with the strange birthmark on his face and his body, and Zeus, thinking this is that marked warrior, sent his children Ares and Athena to hunt down Deimos and take him to Thanatos, the god of death. And so Ares and Athena unleashed a bunch of centaurs on Sparta, who ravaged the city as they searched. They eventually got Deimos and began to leave with him. Young Kratos tried to fight them off, and he leapt at them, and he was easily smacked sideways by Ares, which left Kratos with a scar over his right eye, which you can still see to this day, up until the most recent God of War. Ares was about to kill Kratos for the disrespect, but Athena stopped Ares and said they got what they came for. This event really hardened Kratos, promising himself that he will never let himself be so helpless again. To honor Deimos, Kratos got the now infamous red tattoo in the same image of his brother's birthmark. So that red tattoo of his is a tribute to his long-lost brother. Eventually, he joined the Spartan army and rose through the ranks, becoming a commander and later a general. He had a wife named Lysandra, and they had a daughter together named Calliope. As a general, he won many battles through brutal and merciless tactics, and with every victory, his pride and hunger for power grew and grew, and his wife pleaded for him to step back from his conquests, but he refused, saying that he'll continue until the glory of Sparta is known throughout the world. His army grew and it swelled, and unfortunately it eventually met its match against barbarian tribes from the east, and they were led by an old nemesis by that point, Ulrich the barbarian king, who Kratos was already familiar with from previous engagements. During the fight, Ulrich got Kratos defeated on his back, and he raised his hammer to finish Kratos off. But in a moment of desperation, Kratos called out to Ares, the god of war, and he offered his soul in exchange for victory. Ares accepted the offer immediately, and the skies split open as Ares descended from Olympus onto the battlefield as a giant. Once he was there, Ares slaughtered all of the barbarians except for Ulrich, and as a symbol of Kratos' servitude, Ares seared these chains to his forearms, never to be removed, and at the other end of the chains, the blades of chaos, the very instruments that Kratos would use to serve his new master. With the blades, Kratos decapitated the barbarian king and managed to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. For years, Kratos was a faithful servant to Ares, raiding villages, slaughtering those who had no love or praise for the god of war, and in that time, Kratos lost almost all traces of his humanity. Maybe he had a little trace left. On one fateful night, Ares sent his favorite assassin to a village full of people devoted to Athena, who had become Ares' rival, as he began to have ambitions towards taking Olympus. And Athena was ever a loyalist to her father Zeus, and Ares was kind of the bad child in that sense. Kratos and his men burned the village to the ground and slaughtered everyone in sight. During the attack, Kratos ignored the village oracle, who was giving him a warning not to go into the temple. He pushed her aside and forced his way in, and in the chaos of battle and bloodlust, he struck down and murdered his own wife and child in cold blood. As he stood there in shock and grief of what he had done, Ares appeared in the flames, basically telling Kratos that he orchestrated this whole thing, and now Kratos will be the perfect warrior and be able to become death itself without anyone to love or to hold him back. Kratos left the bodies behind to burn within the temple, and he began calling out in anger for Ares. The oracle then came back, who was still alive, and she laid a curse upon Kratos that the ashes of his wife and child be fastened to his skin, never to be scrubbed off or scoured away, giving birth to the name Ghost of Sparta. This horrible act would later on give him nightmares that he'll desperately try to escape, but for now they remain hidden away under his oath to Ares. That's one of the benefits of staying in service to the god of war. Kratos would become infamous and widely known for his cruelty, even to the point that Mimir of Norse mythology heard the tales. For cursing at Ares and meaning to break his oath, Ares enlisted the help of the Furies to hunt down and punish Kratos and force him back into faithful service. The Furies are three ancient sisters who were born in the chaos of a war between the primordials. They were neither Titan nor God, and their directive was to punish the dishonorable, oath-breakers like Kratos. One of the Furies, Alecto, had a son with none other than Ares, a son named Orcos, who becomes the oath-keeper for the Furies. Eventually, Kratos meets Orcos, who informs him of Ares' larger strategy. Since Zeus had forbidden the gods from warring against each other, Ares was wanting to breed a warrior capable of destroying his father Zeus so that he can make himself the king of Olympus. While Kratos was in service to Ares, the god of war put Kratos through 3 specific tests that would eventually bind Kratos to his will completely: the slaughter of his enemies, the slaughter of innocents, and the slaughter of his own family. Kratos sets out to formally break his oath to Ares, and he eventually kills the 3 Furies. They used to be far more just and reasonable, but Ares' influence kind of corrupted them and made them ruthless, which caused Orcos to ally instead with Kratos. After their death, Orcos congratulates Kratos and informs him that he himself is now the keeper of Kratos' oath to Ares, and he begs Kratos for a dignified death, as it would free them both from the oppression of Ares. After some resistance of not wanting to shed any more innocent blood, Kratos eventually agrees, and he does kill Orcos, finally breaking his bond to Ares. Though with the bond broken, the vision of his most terrible deeds came rushing back to him full force, and he then went into service to Athena and the Olympians, working against the interests of the renegade Ares, who was trying to overthrow them. For the next decade, he served the gods of Olympus in whatever they asked of him. He fought off a Persian invasion. He killed Persephone, Hades' wife, who was trying to destroy the world, and he recaptured the Titan Atlas, who had gotten away with Persephone's help. He slaughtered the Hydra in the Aegean Sea, but still the nightmares tormented him. Soon after killing this Hydra, he spoke with Athena, and he asked when he would be free of his pain. She finally gave him an opportunity to get his vengeance and destroy Zeus with the use of Pandora's box. He asked her if this would erase his nightmares, but she was vague and said that his sins would be forgiven once he completes this final task. He took that to mean that his nightmares would vanish and set out on his journey of vengeance. The quest first took him to the ancient city of Athens, which was now under attack by Ares and his minions, and he fought his way through the hordes and then made his way to the Desert of Lost Souls, where he would eventually find the Titan Kronos, who had been cursed by Zeus to wander around with a mountain, the Temple of Pandora, on his back. And Pandora's box sat at the very top of this temple, on top of the Titan's back, and something that no mortal has ever been able to reach. Kratos made his way to the Titan, and he fought his way to the top of the temple, eventually becoming the first man to ever reach Pandora's box. He began to push it out of the temple when Ares, all the way back in Athens, seemed to sense that Kratos had succeeded, and the giant god picked up a broken pillar and threw it like a spear over Athens, over the desert, towards the mountain on the Titan's back, and right through the torso of Kratos, pinning him to the wall. The Harpies then came and reclaimed Pandora's box to take to Ares as the life faded away from Kratos. He fell into the underworld, but he managed to work his way back out with the help of a mysterious gravedigger who turned out to be Zeus in disguise. Back in the land of the living, he headed back through the now ruined city of Athens to find Ares holding the box and cursing at Zeus. Kratos launched a thunderbolt at the box, and he gets it out of Ares' hands, and then he's able to open it, unleashing all the forces within. And he grows to be the same size as Ares, and then they engage in a brutal fight. Unable to defeat Kratos and feeling frustrated with the battle, Ares pulls Kratos into this dream world where he finds an illusion of his wife and child, and suddenly there are dozens of Kratos clones that are hell-bent on murdering his wife and child, and Kratos fights them all away, saving his family from himself. Unfortunately, it's all an illusion crafted by Ares, and as Ares taunts Kratos, he rips off the blades of chaos from his arms and hurls the twin blades at Lysandra and Calliope, killing them all over again. This brings Kratos back to where their first phase of the battle happened, outside of Athens, and Ares tries to give him a death blow, but Kratos dodges at the last second and picks up a giant sword that is used as a bridge for the small folk, literally, the small people. He picks up a sword that's like a bridge to us normal people. After another brutal round of fighting, Kratos gets the upper hand and puts Ares on the defense. He defeats Ares, and as Ares sits helpless, he tells Kratos that he was just trying to make him a great warrior. Kratos replies that he succeeded as he plunges the blade right through Ares' face and becoming the mortal who managed to murder a god. At least at the time we think he's immortal. Though his sins were now forgiven by the gods of Olympus, they refused to erase the memories of his past actions. With all hope lost, Kratos attempted to kill himself by jumping off of a cliff, but Athena instead saved him and raised him back onto the cliff. She told him that with Ares now dead, there's an empty seat, a vacancy on Olympus that needs to be filled. She opens a portal to Olympus, and Kratos walks through, accepting the offer to become the next god of war. Though at the time we thought he was a mortal who killed a god, we later learned that he was the son of Zeus, thus a demigod, half human, half god. Though when he assumed the title God of War, he was able to become a god with even more power. His blades of chaos were replaced by the similar blades of Athena, and though he accepted this offer from Athena, he became defiant of basically anything the gods asked of him. As God of War, he still had his visions, and he eventually had visions of his mother Callisto being held at the Temple of Poseidon in Atlantis. Athena warned him not to go there, but by then he was growing used to ignoring basically everything she said. On his way, he had yet another vision, and this time it was of his brother Deimos training with Kratos in their childhood. He found his way to Poseidon's temple, and he found his mother, who he thought was dead, and she begins to tell him that it was his father who took her there, and that his brother is still alive, being imprisoned and tortured by Thanatos in the domain of death. Angered by these revelations, Kratos demands to know who his father was, but before she could utter a name, she's transformed into a beast, a hideous thing who attacks Kratos, forcing him to fight back and mortally wound her. And she transforms back into his mother after being defeated, and as she lays dying, she thanked him for freeing her and told him that he must go and rescue his brother. Infuriated at the gods yet again for cursing his mother and causing her death, Kratos set out to save his brother against Athena's orders. She ordered him to leave that alone, but he's not listening. In a volcano near Atlantis, he came across the Titan Thera, who told him that he wouldn't be able to leave or escape his torment without setting her free. So he plunged his blades of Athena into the Titan, who then started tearing off her chains and setting off the volcano, causing big trouble for Poseidon's city of Atlantis, which began to sink into the sea. Eventually, Kratos found his brother alive in the domain of death, and Kratos freed him from his torture, though Deimos attacked him, still angry at his older brother for failing to save him all those years ago. As they fought each other, they were interrupted by Thanatos, who snatched Deimos away and tried to kill him, and then Kratos would save his brother from that. They then reconciled their differences and joined together to fight the god of death. Thanatos himself was familiar with the prophecy of a marked warrior wiping out the Olympians, and he mocks them, saying that Zeus, Ares, and Athena chose the wrong marked warrior, and that it was Kratos they should have taken away. In the fight, Thanatos kills Deimos, only for Kratos to kill him in return. Kratos then buries his brother, who is now free of his torments. Athena, who had accidentally reminded Kratos that it was she and Ares who first took Deimos away all those years ago, begged for forgiveness. She didn't mean to let that slip out, but after she did, she begged for forgiveness, and she even offered full god powers to Kratos. But he instead promised that the gods would pay for their actions. Kratos then really became the black sheep of the Olympian gods and spent his days brooding in isolation and helping Sparta conquer Greece. Sometime later, Kratos descended into the city of Rhodes to aid his Spartan soldiers. Athena had begged him not to go, but he went anyway, and she told herself that if he doesn't listen to me, he leaves her no choice. In Rhodes, as a giant Kratos ravaged the city, Athena appeared as an eagle or owl, maybe, as an owl, but she betrayed him by stealing away his god powers, greatly weakening him and making him shrink back into his normal size, and she then placed those powers in the large statue known as the Colossus of Rhodes. The Colossus of Rhodes? The Colossus of Rhodes. Once a real statue. This was actually a real statue in antiquity, but it's been destroyed by like an earthquake. And it's kind of similar to the Titan of Braavos in A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. So imagine something like that just coming to life and attacking the shit out of you. It's like, what are you going to do? During his struggle against this statue, who was clearly after Kratos, Zeus convinced Kratos to place the rest of his powers in the legendary Blade of Olympus, which was forged by Zeus during the Great War between the gods and Titans. And he dropped the blade from Olympus and it landed somewhere near Kratos. Kratos made his way over to the sword and drained the rest of his god powers into the blade and used it to finally slay the Colossus of Rhodes. Victorious but gravely injured, Kratos is then met by Zeus, who takes advantage of the weakened Kratos and drives a sword through Kratos and fatally wounds him, telling Kratos that the cycle ends here, meaning the cycle of son killing father. Zeus then uses the Blade of Olympus to wipe out almost every Spartan in Kratos' army, and as Kratos dies, he promises retribution, saying that Zeus will suffer for this. As he falls once again into the depths of Hades, the Titans intervene, and Mother Earth, Gaia, steps forward to heal the gaping hole in his torso and tells him that they will need his help to exact vengeance on the gods who defeated them long ago and imprison them in the underworld of Tartarus. Gaia gave him instructions to find the Sisters of Fate and ask them that they take him back in time to the moment Zeus betrayed him. After a long, arduous journey, he finally finds the sisters, but they side with the gods and refuse to help Kratos. Never one to take no for an answer, however, Kratos murders all three of them and takes the threads of life under his control, allowing him to traverse time. And he uses his thread to go back to when Zeus betrayed him, and they engage in a brutal fight that ends with Zeus about to die. And they kind of wrestle back and forth with the Blade of Olympus, and it eventually ends up in Kratos' hands. And with the blade, Kratos lunges towards Zeus to plunge the sword into him for the final death blow, ending it there. However, Athena gets in the way and sacrifices herself while Zeus escapes like a little coward. And as she dies in his arms, Athena tells Kratos that he must not continue on this path and that he cannot kill his own father, revealing for the first time to Kratos that Zeus is his father and that he's the bastard son. Athena continues saying that God after God will deny him his vengeance. And as she dies, he tells her that if all on Olympus will deny him his vengeance, then all on Olympus will die. Oh, He then returns to the threads of life and goes way, way back in time, long before his life, to the moment just before Zeus ended the great war with the Titans. And just before the blade of Olympus wipes them all out, Kratos brings Gaia and the rest of the Titans forward into his time, and they begin their assault on Mount Olympus, thus beginning the second great war between Titans and gods. Honestly, you gotta give props to God of War 2. Just legendary game. Still, I really think that it's still the best ending to a game ever. Like, every time someone's like, what's the best ending to a game? It's like God of War 2. Gotta be. Like watching the Titans climb up Mount Olympus while Kratos is holding the blade of Olympus, riding on Gaia's back. And the final line of God of War being like, Zeus, your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus. Like, oh my God. Like, what beats that? Someone tell me. I'm dying to know. Nothing beats it. I already know the answer. That's the best ending to a game, objectively. As Olympus begins to quake, Zeus sends Poseidon, Hades, Helios, Hermes, Hercules, etc. after Kratos and the Titans. First up against Kratos is Poseidon, who's wanted to kill Kratos ever since he destroyed Atlantis. He dives off of the summit of Olympus, and like a bullet, he shoots right into the gut of another Titan, knocking the Titan off the cliff as they both fall into the sea. And he then uses the sea and possibly pieces of the dead Titan to form an insane monster that's made of water with tentacles with horse heads and crab legs at the end. It's crazy. And remember, Poseidon is the god of horses too, which I don't know why, but I think it's cool. I love how it's just like a horse head made of water with crab legs and just all kinds of tentacles that have that exact same feature. Poseidon then gets into the heart of this beast behind some sort of rock barrier, and he begins using the tentacles to grab the Titans and yank them from the side of Olympus. He does the same to Gaia, but she manages to cling to the mountain, making her slide around a mountain while Kratos is sliding around on her. I mean, it's just so much going on that it was just ridiculous to see on the screen. Kratos takes out one of the tentacle horsehead things after it stabs through Gaia's chest, which leaves a huge hole in her chest that leads down to the chamber of her heart. Remember that for later. After Kratos defeats one of the tentacles, he ends up facing off against the entire monster and Poseidon himself. And after a long, epic fight, Gaia finally manages to break free of all the tentacles with her fist, and she punches the monster right in its heart, right where Poseidon is, and then Kratos leaps from her fist and he rips Poseidon right out of the monster, and they fly all across the ocean onto a cliff, and he slams him against the wall and just brutally fucking murders him. It is ridiculous. You see it from Poseidon's point of view as Kratos is just punching him, and just the fury coming from Kratos at that moment. I think that could be possibly my favorite fight I've ever had maybe in a game. He and Gaia then complete the climb of Olympus and find Zeus near the summit. And Kratos approaches him, asking, "What will you do, father? You can no longer hide behind the skirts of Athena." But Zeus, he's able to charge up and launch a powerful lightning bolt at Kratos and Gaia, and he knocks them off the side of the mountain. And after a fall, Gaia manages to grab on and get a grip and hold herself onto the mountain. And Kratos then, he manages to kind of latch on to her, but he's about to fall, unable to continue holding on. And at that point, Gaia shows Kratos her true colors after pretending to be an ally all this time. She tells Kratos that he has served his purpose in bringing them back from imprisonment, and that he was nothing but a pawn in their game and nothing more. And she then shakes him off as he plunges to his death and back into Hades, promising himself that he will have his vengeance. In Hades, Kratos meets a ghost version of Athena who says that her noble sacrifice gave her a higher existence, and she offers to help him get his revenge on Zeus, which is obviously suspicious because, she died protecting Zeus. but she vaguely says that after her death she saw truth where she didn't see it before, and then replaces his blades of Athena with the blades of exile. She tries to butter him up a little bit, give him some better blades. She then tells him to find and extinguish the flame of Olympus, which is the source of Zeus's power. He makes his way through Hades and eventually comes to meet Hades himself. And just like Poseidon, Hades had wanted to kill Kratos because, well, Kratos killed Persephone, though she was trying to destroy the world in Kratos' defense. And they get into a huge fight, and towards the end, Kratos manages to wrestle away the claws of Hades, these claws that Hades would use to rip the souls out of any enemy, and he uses it against Hades, ripping his soul out as Hades had done to many before. Kratos then makes his way out of the underworld once again. He then goes on to wipe out the rest of the Pantheon as they try to intervene and protect Zeus. He slays Helios, god of the sun, ripping off his head and using it as a lantern to progress through the dark caverns. And Helios' death makes the sun fall out of the sky as the earth is covered by a storm of rain and thunder. And he later kills Hermes, the messenger god, and takes his boots, which allows Kratos to run on walls and cross huge gaps and continue his quest. And that causes a plague of locusts to swarm out of the messenger god's dead corpse. And he later even kills his own brother, demigod Hercules, by taking the Nemean cestus, these huge metal lion fist things, and just putting a crater in his face. Crazy brutal death for old Hercules. He also kills Hera, his evil stepmom, Zeus's wife, who wanted Kratos killed as an infant, being a product of Zeus's adultery. But as he kills her, all the flora dries up and dies. He also finds his former ally, the Mother Earth Titan Gaia, hanging from a cliff, who is now struggling and asking once again for his aid. "You must help me, Kratos." So, I mean, the second great war is raging now between the Titans of the gods, and every one of them is an enemy of Kratos. He obviously wasn't going to help her for her betraying him earlier and getting him killed, and instead he hacks off her hand and sends her plummeting down the mountain, though she isn't quite dead yet. He also eventually comes across Kronos, who is now imprisoned in Tartarus and seeking vengeance for Kratos attacking Gaia earlier on. Kratos kills him as well in truly epic fashion. Kronos eventually swallows Kratos, just like old times, but Kratos used the blade of Olympus to slice his stomach open, disemboweling him and ultimately working his way back up to the giant's head. As he struggled to hold up Pandora's temple still chained to his back, Kratos drives the blade of Olympus right into his forehead, killing Grandpa Kronos. He eventually makes his way to the top of Olympus, where father and son have their final battle amidst the ruin that Kratos has brought to the world. Zeus tells him there will be much work to be done after he kills Kratos. And look at all the destruction that Kratos has brought. And Kratos tells him, "I see only what I come to destroy." I mean, man, he's got just bars. He got the best lines. And as they fight, Gaia finally returns to the peak and tries to kill them both. And Zeus and Kratos enter that cavity near her heart, that hole in the chest left by Poseidon's beast. And Kratos then begins to fight Zeus in the chamber right next to Gaia's heart. At the end of this, they wrestle the blade of Olympus back and forth, and Kratos gets the upper hand and drives it through Zeus's chest and right into the heart of Gaia all in one. It kills her instantly, and she crumbles into dust, although Zeus, he isn't finished yet. As some sort of ghost or apparition made of fear and hatred, a ghost Zeus comes out of his physical body and grabs Kratos and kind of snaps his neck, bringing him into this weird universe of his own mind. Here, Kratos faces his past nightmares, and as he gets through it, he finally forgives himself for killing his family and for killing Athena. And he had the help of the spirit of Pandora, a young girl who he also has rescued and met along his way up Olympus. She's not a real girl. She wasn't really a living child, but a creation of Hephaestus, whom Kratos had grown fond of. She reminded him that hope is all that we have to fight with when all else is lost. As the power of hope came rushing back to him, he awoke again in the physical world and freed himself from the grip of Zeus's ghost. He also regained his godly powers and punched the ghost right back into Zeus's physical body, kind of resurrecting him in a way, but you can tell that he's weakened and able to be defeated. Kratos is finally able to beat Zeus to death, and he doesn't even use his blades of chaos. He throws them off to the side and bludgeons the shit out of Zeus with his bare hands until he's had enough. And it's so cool in the gameplay because it goes into first person and allows you to just mash the punch button as Zeus's blood covers the camera, and you can hit it as long as you, the player, wanted. And you let out your rage. You deal with Zeus as you see fit. And there were times that I probably went on for like 15 minutes. Pissed at you, especially after I beat it on God mode, and that took forever. I did not do well with that. It took like months to beat that. So by the time that I got through that and had the chance to just mash the shit out of his face, I did that for probably a good hour, just till I was tired, till my thumb was like cramping, guzzling mustard to keep my thumb going. And with that, the Olympian gods were no more, leaving nothing but chaos and ruin in its wake, appearing, though not truly, but it appeared to envelop the world in chaos and doom. His blades finally fell right off with the chains, almost as if his enslavement has finally come to an end. And Athena then reappeared to him in ghost form, telling him that he is victorious. And back when he first opened Pandora's box to defeat Ares, he unleashed the evils that were collected in there and contained from the Great War, fear and anger, and it ended up consuming Zeus, which made him obsessed with killing his son to make sure that no marked warrior would ever overthrow him. And that fear that literally consumes Zeus explains the black smoke that kind of leaves his face just as he's about to die, right before Kratos punches him into non-existence. Kratos consumed the power of hope from within the box, and that is what he used to kill Ares. She also says that hope is her property, it's hers by right, and that people are now ready to hear her message. Kratos tells her, "Look around at the chaos of the world. What good is your message?" She told him that these people cannot be trusted with such a power and demanded that he give it back. But ever the renegade, Kratos had other plans. He took the blade of Olympus and he stabbed himself clean through, allowing the power of hope that was within him to scatter throughout the world out to the people, leaving Athena without that power to hoard for herself and leverage against humanity, snuffing out her ambitions. He lay there dying with the glaring hole through his torso. No more purpose, his vengeance is complete, and then rolls the credits to God of War 3. After the credits, however, you see the spot where he had collapsed and a blood trail heading toward the cliffs, indicating that he somehow survived and moved on to other things. Ultimately, the marked warrior prophecy came true against Zeus's wishes, and just as Kronos castrated and defeated his father Uranus, just as Zeus later defeated and imprisoned his father Kronos, Kratos overthrew and defeated his father Zeus. The wheel of patricide rolls on and on. But please, Atreus, be cool. Break the wheel. God, that's a bitch to break, isn't it? The wheel, the cycle of patterns. And with that brings an end to the original franchise, the original series. And now we're on to other things. On his travels away from the ruined Greece, Kratos discovers that he's cursed to wander the earth forever as punishment for his past deeds. After some time, he once again is visited by the Blades of Chaos, which were replaced soon after he slew Ares. Upon seeing them, he threw them far out into the sea and he fell asleep. When he awoke, the blades had returned to him, and he was determined to find solitude and be free of these symbols of his sins and enslavement. He threw them far away yet again and wandered for days and days, fighting off the need for sleep until he eventually lost that battle. Once again he woke up, and there they are. He rids himself of them once again and wanders into a village. The people there, though far from Greece, are well aware of who he is. There he meets a village elder that tells him that he is wandering the land of the pharaohs, though his destiny lies elsewhere. However, a time is coming that he will be needed there. Kratos refuses to listen and moves on to his travels, depriving himself of sleep, only to succumb and to wake with the blades near him yet again, to the point that he began to question his sanity. During his travels, he dreams of seeing a statue of Athena, who tells him that their business isn't finished and that he must return to Greece and fulfill his purpose. Months later, he returned to the same Egyptian village where a large crocodile was attacking them, and the old man returns to tell him that the people have prayed for salvation from this beast, and perhaps Kratos is that answer to their prayers. Maybe it's no coincidence that he's there. Kratos has had enough of all this destiny talk and prophecy and being a tool of some higher being's will. Obviously, he's sensitive to that shit. He threatens to kill some of the villagers if they don't leave him the hell alone, but the old man asked him to show some mercy to these people, just as he would wish mercy be shown to his lost family. So that guy knows his past. The man reiterates that he cannot outrun his destiny and that the past will always be with him. Eventually in this conversation, Kratos turns around to look at the man, but he's simply vanished, making Kratos question if he really has lost his mind. He's not knowing where reality begins and where it ends anymore. And finally this beast confronts Kratos and instigates a fight, and it tries to eat Kratos, but he tears off its upper jaw and he kills it. The man reappears to tell Kratos that his purpose here has not yet been fulfilled. Suddenly, a much larger beast, known as a chaos beast, a giant ferocious hippo, appears, and Kratos just wants to be left alone, desperately. He really doesn't care, but it keeps escalating to the point that he has to punch the beast in the nose, though it has no effect, and the hippo kicks him through the sky into the side of a mountain, knocking Kratos out cold. Once again, Kratos wakes up in a dream realm where he sees the old man, who turns out to be the Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth, as well as Athena, and they tell him that he's tried to outrun his destiny for too long and that he must embrace it. Kratos becomes absolutely enraged that he's cursed to still use these damn blades of chaos, but he grabs them anyway, and with that acceptance, that begrudging acceptance, he reawakens and fights the powerful hippo. This time he manages to cut through the beast and do some damage. The beast kicks him away, and he uses the blades of chaos to regain his footing, and he slices off the leg of the charging hippo. After a decent struggle, he slices the hippo's head off, and exhausted, he collapses. Thoth tells him that he's fulfilled his purpose here in the land of the pharaohs, and Kratos is still brooding over the fact that he will never fully lose his rage and that he's forever trapped in a cage of his darkest feelings and emotions, reliving his worst memories forever that he's just unable to escape from. Unhappy but accepting the presence of the blades, he continues on his travels. I honestly have no idea the time span between the original games and when he appeared in Scandinavia. It could be a century, it could be 1500 years. I've heard both, and I've heard plenty in between. According to the wiki that I've been referencing a lot for this, godofwar.fandom.com, God of War of 2018 takes place a century after the fall of Olympus, so I'll go off of that for now, but take it with a grain of salt. After leaving Greece and traveling through the land of the pharaohs and gods know where else, he eventually settled in the cold lands of the Norse gods. Turns out, the plague and destruction that befell the Greek world stayed within its boundaries and never destroyed the entire planet. It is said in some places that he had 75 years of solitude before he met Faye, and they initially fought each other, and she was a great warrior in her own right, earning Kratos' respect and admiration. The fight was fairly quick and they got to know each other, and they eventually fell in love. 10 years later, they built a house in the wild woods, and Kratos informed her of his past and stashes the blades of chaos in the basement, still cursed by the ever-present blades. At some point, 22 years later, not sure if it's 22 years after he met Faye or 22 years after they built their home, Kratos and Faye have a son that Kratos would name Atreus, named for a Spartan soldier of great spirit that he once knew. Atreus was much closer to his mother than to his father, with Faye teaching him how to hunt and how to read, and in accordance with Faye's wishes, Kratos never took him hunting since he was a sickly little boy. During this time, Kratos would venture into the woods in search of enemies in order to test his own patience, his self-control, his pacifism. Faye thought that Kratos was out trying to find trouble, but he was actually trying to control his rage by not fighting, and instead simply defending and deflecting any attacks until his enemies would tire themselves out. It's hinted that he failed over and over and over until once when he encountered a pack of wolves and successfully fended them off. However, a couple trolls then appeared and pushed him to the brink where he lost control and killed them with ease. This made him very disappointed in himself, however, and so he continued to wander through the woods to test himself, which kept him away from home for long periods of time, leading Atreus to believe that he didn't care about him or Faye. At the age of 6, Atreus received a leather-bound diary from his mother, who taught him the importance of writing and reading and seeing the world with wide open eyes. For the first 2 years, Atreus simply practiced at writing. At the end of the 2 years, Faye held a ceremony in which Atreus tossed his practice pages into the fire pit, while Kratos looked on in confusion, not really understanding the significance of this ritual. Atreus was excited to finally start his real journal, and her stories brought him great comfort while he was sick in bed. And through the stories that Faye told him, Atreus began to dream of someday meeting all the animals and the great legendary people except for the gods, the Aesir and the Vanir. And it was Faye who made the bow for Atreus, which he would later name the Talon Bow, and when Kratos first saw the weapon, he was impressed and called it remarkable. She also pushed him to learn to read runes, which would lead to frustration and fits of sickness, but something that will definitely pay off later. One day he was practicing shooting arrows with the Talon Bow when he heard a rabbit far off in the distance, which sounded like a voice with no words. But the rabbit was terrified, he knew that much, and it made Atreus feel bad for the animal. And in this distraction, he accidentally shot the arrow, and it hit the fence just above his mother's head, and he was so pissed at himself that he made himself sick and passed out. He woke up and he started crying to his mother about his stupid sickness, fearful that he could have killed his mother, which Kratos laughs at the idea that a single arrow could ever kill Faye, and she would give him some kind advice, saying anger can be dangerous, especially when you wield it against yourself. One day Atreus was studying runic charms, and he spoke one out loud, and suddenly he felt this warmness moving inside of him, and he could suddenly sense the thoughts of a little vole 50 meters away. In his journal, he eventually took note that his mother was now leaving home for days at a time, while his father took parental duties and stayed home, which made Atreus curious what the hell she was doing and where she was going. I bet that she was painting the trees, painting the pathways that she will soon want Kratos and Atreus to follow. Not long after, Faye died mysteriously and requested that her family take her ashes to the highest peak in all 9 realms. Before their journey began, and before she passed away, Faye marked the trees around their home with a yellow handprint, and they were specific trees that she had them cut down for her funeral pyre. And these trees, it turned out, helped maintain the protective stave, the barrier around their home, which kept them safe from the wrath of the Norse gods. And she ended up making their home less safe in order to force Kratos and Atreus to venture out into the world. Still, Kratos wanted to be sure that Atreus was ready for the journey and took him hunting as Faye's funeral pyre burned her body into ash. After a few mistakes and some tense exchanges with the old grumpy Spartan, Atreus finally manages to prove himself by killing a deer. However, a troll steals away their prize as they fight him and kill him. And after he lay dead, Atreus loses himself in his rage and slices at the dead troll, having a little coughing fit, which makes Kratos intervene and conclude that Atreus is still not ready for their journey to the highest mountain. After arriving back home, Kratos is chiding his son for losing control when suddenly they're interrupted by a stranger at the door. This stranger examines Kratos, noting he thought Kratos would be bigger, but that he's definitely the one he's looking for. He also says, "I thought your kind was supposed to be so much better, so enlightened, so much smarter," in a mocking tone. Kratos is trying hard to use his words to make the man leave peacefully without a fight, but the man refuses to leave, and eventually he backhands Kratos and punches him around while Kratos doesn't even flinch. Eventually Kratos has had enough and catches a fist and punches the stranger in the face and says that he tried to keep the peace, but the man refused to listen. The stranger is muttering, "No, no, no," as Kratos approaches him, and he finally punches Kratos with his actual strength, sending Kratos far into the air to come crashing down onto his roof and then into the backyard. And this begins an absolutely brutal one-on-one fight, kind of the opposite of the opening fight of God of War 3 with the Poseidon monster. This one's much more personal, intimate, but still equally epic. The man mocks the aging Kratos for feeling every hit, while this stranger can feel nothing, and he was disappointed that Kratos is yet another person who will not be able to make him feel anything. The fight ends as Kratos snaps the stranger's neck and sends him right off the cliff. We will talk more of this exchange toward the end of the podcast, but there is a lot more to it. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank the patrons of Ghost Data and the Bloodmead Sanctum. Melissa, she's joined the Sanctum as a disciple of the Ghost, our one and only so far, and our curators of Golden Skulls are Patrick, Tyler, Anthony, and Kathy. Thank you guys for being a part of this project. I am so happy to have you. Seriously, thank you for the support. I'm forever in your debt. If you want more information on all the things we do at the Bloodmead Sanctum, as well as the rewards available for you in exchange for your support, please check out patreon.com/OdinGrim172 for more information. Back to the story. Knowing that their home is no longer safe, Kratos changes his mind and decides that even though Atreus isn't ready, it's time to begin their journey to the mountain. And this journey will be much more involved and much more significant than Kratos or Atreus could possibly understand. As they journey through the mountain, they meet a dwarf named Brock, who's a blacksmith who used to work with his brother Sindri until they got into a big argument over who was the best of the two in their trade, as well as being stressed out over a few other things that we'll get into. And these two used to be relatively unknown, nobodies really, until Odin, the Allfather, commissioned them to create the hammer Mjolnir so that his son Thor could use it to protect Asgard. Thor would use this hammer indiscriminately to murder various giants, even some that simply annoyed him. Odin himself had no love for the giants, although they were a peaceful and intelligent, developed, cultured race, and they were neutral as far as the conflict between the Aesir and Vanir, but Odin wanted to destroy them all the same. He was deeply jealous of their ability to see the future, and he desired to acquire their secret knowledge of Ragnarok. Tyr, the Norse god of war, was much more friendly with the giants, and they worked together to construct his great temple in the middle of the Lake of Nine. After it was finished, the giants of Jotunheim asked for a meeting with Odin, hoping to reach a peace treaty. Odin accepted, feigning good faith, though he instead used the invitation into Jotunheim to steal some knowledge about Ragnarok. Odin and Tyr met with the giants in a grand hall covered in tapestries displaying different events around Ragnarok, and Odin surprised everyone by offering up Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, as an olive branch. However, one of the giants saw Odin memorizing the tapestries while the other giants were huddling trying to figure out how to answer Odin's unexpected offering. As you picture these giants, just remember that giants range in size from human size to as big as the world serpent. Plus, yeah, they're not all human-like. Some are wolves, like Skull and Hati, and obviously the world serpent, Jormungandr. Plus, there's frost giants, fire giants, wolf giants, stone giants. But anyway, the giant who spied Odin called out the deceit and they tried to seize him. He quickly transformed into a hawk and he fled Jotunheim while Tyr stayed behind. Luckily, the giants knew him well and they knew that he wouldn't be part of Odin's schemes, but they made Tyr promise to disable his temple's ability to get into Jotunheim so that their realm would be safe from intruders like Odin going forward and so that they can live on without the fear of genocide. Tyr realized that Odin wanted them all to die, and so with the great sadness, he agreed and he would keep his word. Odin, having failed to steal all the knowledge that he could, was so enraged that he ordered his son Thor to kill all the giants in Midgard before they could find their way back home. Tyr helped as many as possible get back before he finally severed the connection between Midgard and Jotunheim by destroying the original travel stone and hiding the realm gate, that tower deep within the realm between realms. There was still a doorway on top of Midgard's mountain, but you have to know the secret rune to be able to open it, which was hard to come by even for Odin, the All-Father of Asgard. Meanwhile, Thor was on the hunt, trying to kill every giant that he could come across, and he eventually came across a giant who was also giant in size, Thamur the stonemason. He had went to Midgard to find his son after feeling terrible for mistreating his son, Hrimthur, I can't say it, Hrimthur. Unfortunately, he ran into Thor, who killed the stonemason, knocking him onto a fishing village which worshipped Njord, which was a Vanir god and enemy of Thor and the Aesir, and Thamur fell on his own chisel and it slammed right through his temple, killing him instantly. Funnily enough, Hrimthur, Thamur's son, had disguised himself as a mortal and crossed paths with Odin, who made a bet with him to improve the walls of Asgard in a near impossible amount of time, 2 years, and if Hrimthur was successful, he'd get a meeting with Freya. Hrimthur proved the Allfather wrong and managed to succeed in that bet, but Odin sent Thor after him after discovering that he was actually a giant in disguise. And while Hrimthur, why do I have to say his name so much? I'm butchering it. While Hrimthur worked on the walls of Asgard, he secretly created a weakness in the walls, and then he told the secret to Freya, saying that when Ragnarok comes, the fire giant Surtur would exploit that weakness and burn the home of the Aesir to ash. So possibly some foreshadowing there. This campaign against the giants led by Thor caused Brock and Sindri to sorely regret ever creating such a weapon for the Aesir, and Sindri especially felt guilty and convinced Brock that it was their duty to set things right, so together they made the Leviathan axe to rival Mjolnir. So that Leviathan axe was made to counter the power of Thor's hammer. While they were forging this axe, Brock was accidentally killed by a spider after Brock had killed the spider's relative. Sindri couldn't stand the thought of losing his brother, so he quickly traveled to Elfheim to reclaim his brother's soul before it found the light of Elfheim and then moved on to Helheim. Sindri was able to retrieve Brock's soul and bring him back to life, but he was so traumatized by it that he never told Brock about the ordeal, so I'm not even sure Brock knew he died. When Brock came back to life, his skin was now blue, though he didn't seem to mind at all or even really take note of it, so he and his brother just continued and finished the Leviathan axe. Soon after, Faye, also known as La Faye the Just, the guardian of Jotunheim, found them, and they knew her as a good-hearted person, a great warrior and guardian. And they gifted her with the axe and hoped that she could restore some balance. Eventually, Brock and Sindri split up and they go their separate ways, unable to work together. That was a little bit of extended backstory, but back to where we are in the game story. On their journey to the mountain where Kratos and Atreus meet Brock, he is stuck on a bridge, unable to make his mount continue toward the workshop. Atreus immediately understands the thoughts and feelings from this animal, probably from his practice at reading runes and feeling what rabbits and voles feel. He tells Brock that the animal is scared of something in the trees ahead, and he asks Kratos to throw the axe. This was 100% correct as the creatures F off, allowing the beast to finish his trip to Brock's shop. As they walk, Brock tries and fails to convince Kratos that he and his brother made that axe, and he proves it when he tells Kratos where to find the maker's mark. And after that, Kratos allows Brock to improve upon the axe as they continue on their journey to the mountain. Soon after, Atreus finds the boar he had been tracking, and he shoots it and takes off ahead of Kratos, and Kratos races forward to find the injured boar and Atreus, along with the mysterious woman known as the Witch of the Woods. She tells them that this boar must not die, and she convinces Kratos to carry the boar through her sanctuary, casting spells to open up access to her home, and she calls towards a tree, and it starts to wiggle and rise out of the ground, revealing that the tree is on the back of a very large turtle, and Atreus goes right up and pets the turtle and knows that he's non-hostile. He later learns through his abilities that the turtle's name is Charlie, and the witch's house is under Charlie's belly. She needs a potion to heal the boar, and she sends Atreus out for some ingredients first, giving her a private moment with Kratos to tell him that she knows that he's a god of some other realm and that he needs to be open with what he is to his son. She says that being what they are, the gods will be very hostile and make their journey difficult. He offers no give, and he refuses to listen, and he heads out to get the next ingredient. After saving the boar from death, Freya puts some sort of spell on Atreus and Kratos to help hide them from the gods so they can travel undetected. She then has Charlie the turtle lay back down, revealing a subterranean path towards a boat and a waterway, and she offers that she will see them as often as they would like to see her. Kratos nods respectfully, and they head toward the boat. They take the waterway out to a large lake containing a huge statue of Thor, and Kratos asks Atreus if Faye ever taught him about a god that can feel no pain, and Atreus instantly recognizes that to be Balder, the son of Odin and Freya, and brother of Thor. In the center of the lake, there's a large statue that has a rune saying, "Sacrifice your arms to the center of the water, awaken again the cradle of the world." Kratos throws his axe into the lake and calls it back, though it doesn't return this time. And suddenly they find themselves clinging desperately to the boat as the once still water becomes like an instant tsunami, and they manage to stay on board as something gargantuan rises from the water. It's the world serpent, Jormungandr, one of the last giants in Midgard. He says something to them in the ancient tongue of the giants, though even Atreus can't yet understand him. This language is said to be older than the mountains themselves. As the snake lies back on a hill to rest, Kratos and Atreus see that the lake has dropped significantly, revealing a huge temple underneath the statue with the rune in it. They head towards what is Tyr's temple and head toward the mountain after a quick rendezvous with Brock again, who has a way to fast travel by slipping between realms, and he's already setting up shop in the newly unsubmerged temple. At the foot of the mountain, they finally meet Sindri, Brock's brother, who also says that he built that axe for someone that he was very fond of, and although he cowers in fear at the much larger Kratos, he stands prepared to fight for Faye's honor, unable to step aside, so that's pretty cool. He is proven to be Brock's brother as Atreus discovers the other half of the brand that they use for the maker's mark on their creations. He also improves the axe, and they continue up the mountain, only to be quickly cut short by the Black Breath, an impenetrable miasma that can only be dispelled by the light of Elfheim. The Witch of the Woods, Freya, arrives to provide this info, and she leads them back to Tyr's temple and the realm travel room within. And you could see that Brock has hidden away from his spot as she passes by, and she also noted that she never saw Sindri when she went by there, making you wonder what these dwarves know of her and why they're so fearful of her. They quickly repair the bridge mechanism and head to the center realm travel room, which has been sitting underwater for 150 years. And using a Bifrost, she reawakens the realm travel room and transports them to Elfheim. As they step into Elfheim, they see that the light of Elfheim is inhibited by the Dark Elves, who have been warring with the Light Elves. The Dark Elves had built a hive that blocks most of the light, and Freya begins explaining what needs to be done when she starts getting ripped back into Midgard, since she's been forbidden by the Aesir to realm travel. Kratos and Atreus fight their way through and ultimately restore the light to its full glow-up. And following Freya's instructions, Kratos steps into the light, where he sees the past, present, and future in a strange vision where he's following the ashes that leave his side and start floating ahead of him. He follows those ashes, and he can hear Atreus speaking to Faye with a little bit of resentment toward Kratos for not ever showing that he cared about him. And I think it was probably a real conversation that he had in private with his mother, like with her when he was praying towards her body. He then appears on a ship in Helheim, which is a vision of the future, and then a bridge in Jotunheim, also the future, where he starts to follow the ash over the bridge. But suddenly he's ripped out of the light by Atreus, who angrily yells at him for being gone for such a long time. Kratos starts to say he was barely in there, but then he notices piles and piles of dead Dark Elves that Atreus had fought off all on his own. With the Bifrost now full of the light of Elfheim, they head back toward the realm travel room. They head back toward the Black Breath and quickly make it vanish under the light of Elfheim, allowing them to progress up the mountain. On their way, they run into a giant dragon who attacks them, flees, and then leaves them behind to attack Sindri, which I wonder, why couldn't Sindri just vanish? Kratos then commences an epic battle with this dragon, ultimately killing him and continuing toward the summit. Once at the summit, Kratos notices that Atreus' quiver is damaged, and he tells him that pain they endure, but not faulty weaponry. He takes a mistletoe arrow from his quiver and breaks off the head and ties the quiver together around it. So there's a piece of mistletoe arrowhead right there in the middle of his chest holding his quiver together. At the summit, they can hear three guys talking to some man tied to a tree, and it turns out to be Baldur, the stranger from before, that Kratos thought he killed by snapping his neck. He's accompanied by Thor's sons, Baldur's nephews, Magni and Modi. The one-eyed man in the tree is Mimir, aka the smartest man alive, former ally and advisor to Odin, who has since obviously had a falling out, being that Odin put him on that tree, and he tortures him. Baldur and Thor's sons are looking for Kratos and Atreus, unable to track them since Freya placed a spell on them to remain undetected. Mimir offers them no answers, even to their threats, saying that Odin will never set him free, nor will Odin allow them to kill him, so they give him nothing to fear. They leave empty-handed, and Kratos and Atreus come right after them to stand in front of the tree. Mimir tells them that if they're looking for the highest mountain in all the realms, they've come to the wrong mountain, and that the tallest peak is actually in Jotunheim, and he offers to help them find a way into the realm, now much harder to access ever since Tyr disconnected it from his temple. But to do that, they will have to take his head and find a way to reanimate it. Luckily, they know of just the witch. Just before Kratos takes his head, and as Atreus steps away, Mimir whispers to Kratos that he should tell his son what they are, gods, and Kratos doesn't listen, instead cutting off his head and returning to the witch. She successfully reanimates Mimir, and obviously they have some bad history, probably from his time being a trusty advisor to Odin, her ex-husband. And he accidentally reveals that she is Freya, a goddess of the Vanir. And Kratos gets angry for not telling him that she's a god, and she says, "Oh, you're seriously going to go there about keeping godhood a secret?" Without much else to say to counter that, he leaves in anger at Freya. They head back to the Lake of Nine and blow the large horn to wake up Jormungandr once again, and luckily Mimir can translate as a speaker of the ancient tongue, although he never spoke it sober, apparently. As the world serpent reawakens, he devours the large statue of Thor in the Lake of Nine, and then goes to talk with the hornblowers. As a giant of Jotunheim himself, he was the only giant that Thor was unable to kill in Midgard, though by the time of Faye's death, pretty much all the other giants were killed. Jormungandr, it is said, he just appeared one day in the Lake of Nine after Thor and he fought such a huge battle that it rippled across all 9 realms, ending in a stalemate that sent him into the past, where he now protects Tyr's temple. And it is said that in Ragnarok, Thor and Jormungandr will fight again, which will be such a huge battle that he will again be sent back in time. And yeah, with the hell that Thor unleashed on all of the giants with his hammer, it's no surprise that the world serpent has such a deep hatred of Thor. Here the serpent tells them what they will need to reach Jotunheim. That they need a piece of the chisel in Thamur's head and a black rune so they can inscribe on the Jotunheim gate at the summit of the mountain. And they also need a black rune so they know what to inscribe on the Jotunheim gate on the mountaintop. After that, they head toward Thamur's giant corpse for a piece of that chisel. Thamur also carried a large hammer, and this hammer is kind of propped up, and they will need to drop it onto the thick sheet of ice to get below and be able to extract a piece of the chisel. After they manage to drop the massive hammer, they run into Magni and Modi, who see them right away, and it begins a brutal fight. And at the end of this fight, Kratos manages to wedge the axe into Magni's forehead, who was the favorite son of Thor. After that, Kratos allows Modi to flee. A much different Kratos. It's like he lets you walk away. And during the fight, the brothers insulted Faye multiple times, and because of this, Atreus kept yelling at Modi as he fled in shock that his brother died, and this anger from Atreus began to make him feel sick again. They work their way back to Tyr's temple in search of an undiscovered area deep below the temple where they can find the black rune. Before they can descend, however, Modi appears yet again, incapacitating Kratos with his lightning powers, while Atreus helplessly tries to fight Modi off. And being so helpless, he explodes in rage and immediately faints, causing Kratos to go into Spartan rage and overpower the lightning and punch the shit out of Modi, sending him crushing into the rock wall. He flees yet again, limping away while Kratos picks up his son, and as they head toward a boat in search of Freya's help, a huge storm has covered the sky. Can't be a coincidence. After they row back into the cave beneath Freya's house, they hear that someone else blows the horn, summoning Jormungandr. Who blew it, and why did they blow the horn? We'll throw some guesses out there later, but that's really a mystery. But I think it's going to have some impact in the next game. So who blew the horn? Remember that question. Kratos carries his unconscious son all the way to Freya's door, and she just tells him to go away since he hates God so much, remember? But he says that it's about his son who has gotten sick, and she then opens the door to help him out. She says that the sickness is due to the true nature within the boy, a nature that he knows nothing about since Kratos refuses to tell him anything about his past. But Kratos is still determined to keep that contained, and he's convinced that even hearing of his past would be a curse on his son, and maybe he's not wrong. She tells him that for medicine she will need the bridge keeper's heart in Helheim, and their underworld is eternally frozen, the opposite of the more common hells and underworlds we picture, at least in my region of the world. I think it's probably since these myths came from so far north, the worst thing imaginable to them was to be eternally freezing. And thus his Leviathan axe with elemental ice powers will be useless against the frosty enemies of Helheim. He then decides that he will have to return home and dig up a past that he swore would stay buried, as he looked towards his forearms that were once covered in chains. She gives him the rune needed to get to Helheim, and he leaves Atreus to her care. He then returns home on Freya's boat that he doesn't even have to row, and on this trip he's visited by the ghost of Athena as he calls out her name and tells her to get out of his head. And without a word of response, she vanishes again. And he returns home and he unwraps his blades of chaos, which have sat there for decades, I think it's safe to say. Such a great part, probably the coolest part of the game. With the axe, you had gotten so used to it, and you're just being thrilled with this new weapon. And I was happy with it. I was content. And then when the blades came back, after I had kind of given up hope to even see them, it was just too overloaded. It was too cool, and it kind of broke me. I felt spoiled and unworthy of this moment. As he starts to wrap the chains around his arms, at least there were no hot chains being seared to him this time, but as he does this, Athena appears in the doorway, finally speaking, taunting him for trying to be a husband and father, and no matter what, he will always be a monster. He says that may be true, but he is no longer her monster, and walks right through as she dissolves into the air. Throughout this, Mimir hears him call out loud to Athena, even though he doesn't seem to see her himself. Kratos travels back to the realm travel room, heading into Helheim, opening the door to a freezing and howling wind. He finds the bridge keeper and ultimately kills him and takes the heart. And just then he starts to see the damage that Helheim can do to your sanity. Zeus appears in the sky over the giant eagle and simply calls out his son's name. Kratos reflexively says, "Zeus?" And Mimir, seeing none of this, repeats it back to Kratos, "Zeus?" And Kratos, without thinking, kind of answers. He gives too much away. He says, "My father." And Mimir is shocked, like, "Your father was Zeus?" He asks Mimir how Zeus could be here, and I believe it's just an illusion, but Mimir says never to go beyond the bridge of the damned, just as Kratos had warned Kratos about. Just as Freya had warned Kratos about. Did I say Kratos? As they head back through Helheim toward Tyr's temple, Mimir pieces together who Kratos is and says, "Wow, I'm dangling from the bloody Ghost of Sparta." Kratos warns him not to call him that, and Mimir says that from what he understood, the Olympians had it coming. And he also pushes Kratos to tell Atreus that he will eventually need to tell him his true nature, but Kratos is still adamant about not doing that. He returns to Midgard and Freya, and they use the heart to make a potion for Atreus, and he wakes back up after hearing some of the conversation between Kratos and Freya. And as they head back to the boat, Kratos decides to tell Atreus the truth, that he is a god from a faraway land, but when he came here, he chose to live as a man instead, though he was born a god, as was Atreus. Atreus' first question upon learning that he's a god is, "Can I turn into an animal?" Leaving Kratos kind of confused and doubtful, but then says, we will see what your abilities will bring. Atreus asks if his mom was a god, and Kratos says that she was a mortal, which is what he truly believed at this point, but that she knew what Kratos really was. He tells Atreus that he tried to spare him of that truth because it can lead to a life of anguish and tragedy. They then return to where Modi ambushed them and head down into Tyr's vault, where they find a bunch of relics that Tyr picked up on his travels, even finding a vase that has an image of Kratos with the blades of chaos in his hands, but he breaks the vase before Atreus can see it. While in Tyr's vault, Kratos gets caught in a trap in which Atreus has to solve a puzzle involving Skoll and Hati, the wolves that chase the sun and moon, and while Kratos is trapped, part of the world tree wipes away the protective spell that Freya gave him to hide him from the gods. He's still able to escape, and they retrieve the black rune, which will show them what to inscribe on the gateway atop the mountain. They then head back up, returning to the mountain summit, and throughout this time, Atreus already is way full of himself, just with the youthful arrogance, blinded by it. As they enter the caverns of the mountain once again, they run into Modi yet again, who has recently been terribly beaten by his father Thor after he blamed Modi for Magni's death. Atreus talks a bunch of shit to him, saying that he'll pick up where Thor left off if you don't piss off. And he pulls out a knife, and Kratos tells him not to kill, but Atreus tells him that as gods, they can do whatever the hell they want. Modi insults Faye one more time, and Atreus subsequently stabs him in the neck, killing him and kicking him off the ledge. Kratos yells at him and says that his arrogance will make him a target, that you can't just do whatever you want. There are consequences for killing a god. Atreus says, "How would you know?" But Kratos doesn't want to go that far with the truth yet. And he says, "Only kill in self-defense." And after totally pissing each other off, they ascend the mountain in mostly silence. Once there, they use the magic chisel to carve the pattern from the black rune into the Jotunheim gate. And just as it opens up and they can see Jotunheim through the gate waiting for them, they get ambushed by Balder, who is now able to track them now that the tree wiped away that spell from Kratos' neck. Kratos ends up body slamming Balder into the gate, completely destroying it, and Kratos tells Atreus to leave, and Balder mocks the kid like, "Yeah, you better leave, you don't want this." Atreus then charges him, but Kratos stops him, saying he's not ready for this fight. But Atreus arrogantly shoves away from his father and shoots Kratos with a lightning arrow. And he then lunges at Balder and stabs him, but Balder feels nothing, and Balder gets a tight hold of Atreus and stabs him back, saying, "Hold this for me." And then they run toward the cliff and jump right off. Kratos is close behind and without even a second thought leaps right off as well. To hell with what happens next. He's going after his son. And he lands on Balder's dragon, and they begin to fight atop the dragon while Atreus is unconscious and chained. Eventually, Balder kicks Kratos off the dragon's back, but Kratos is able to dig a blade into the dragon's wing, and as he rips the wing apart, he then free falls onto the bridge of Tyr's temple. And the dragon is going in for a crash landing, but as he flies over the temple roof, Balder takes Atreus and they bail from the dragon, landing right inside the realm travel room. And Kratos charges in and they continue fighting. And Balder is trying to open the door to Asgard so that all the Aesir gods will come in and destroy Kratos. But Kratos overpowers him and slams the Bifrost in, forcing open the door to Helheim. And this time, they're all sucked into the realm as they fly through the air, beating the shit out of each other and wrestling for possession of Atreus. Kratos gets hold of Atreus just as they both crash into a tower. That was just such an epic fight, from the top of the mountain summit in Midgard all the way to the darkest depths of Helheim. Like, what a crazy fight. What the hell just happened? Kratos digs Atreus out from some rubble and grabs his arm and chews his ass out, blaming his arrogance at why they're there in the first place, and that he has not been himself, and that he will not dishonor his mother's memory. By then, I think Atreus is like, yeah, I'm kind of starting to learn my lesson. But anyway, they start to make their way back towards Tyr's temple, though they are now exactly where they've been warned not to go, past the Bridge of the Damned. On the way, they find Balder, and just as Kratos saw visions of Zeus, Balder is having a vision with his past, which reveals a lot. We learn that his mother is, of course, Freya, and that it was Freya who put a spell on him to prevent him from dying. However, this spell also made Balder not feel anything at all. He couldn't taste food, he couldn't feel the warm sun, he couldn't feel, the touch of a woman, anything. But he's watching and wanting his ghost version of himself to kill Freya as if it could alter what he is now. But she did it out of love for her son, but he completely resents her for taking away his ability to feel anything. Kratos gets suspicious of Mimir, asking why you didn't point out to them earlier that Freya is his mom. But when his head was resurrected, Freya must have put a spell on him to not remember Baldur's one weakness, or really anything about Baldur, including who his mother was. And it was interesting that here, much deeper in Helheim than the earlier trek, we could see the visions that Baldur was having from our point of view, from Kratos and Atreus seeing it. Earlier, it didn't seem that Mimir heard Zeus call out to Kratos and he didn't see it, but they were just barely inside the realm in comparison to where they're at now. So I don't know, maybe the further in you are, the stronger and more visible the visions become, even to others around you. This seems possible because as Kratos and Atreus find a ship, and they ultimately flip it to make it fly back toward Tyr's temple, Kratos has more visions of Zeus, and Atreus shows that he also sees them, even though he downplays it a little later on. And you can see the camera move toward a ghost of younger Kratos, just the way he threw his blades aside and bludgeoned Zeus to death, as the camera goes into first person once again, looking just as it did at the end of God of War 3, but this is just the Helheim version of it. And the ship that they're flying on after a few big battles is falling apart as it glides and crashes into Tyr's temple, but hey, at least they're back, right? And on their way back through the temple, they're kind of in a section they haven't been to yet. They find a hidden panel with instructions on how to get to Jotunheim, and after Kratos slammed Baldur and destroyed the gate, Mimir figured there was no other way into the realm, that we just gotta survive and then ultimately give up on the quest of scattering the ashes, but this panel makes him realize that there's another way by making a key that's pictured on the panel and finding a way to restore the gate to Jotunheim on the lake, the one that Tyr severed as a promise to the giants. Once they get back to Midgard, they meet Brock, who refuses to make the key for them since he only makes weapons, but just then his brother Sindri shows up, and they finally reconcile and make the key together. And they use the key to access a hidden part of the temple's underbelly, and there Kratos and Atreus find that they're in an upside-down copy of the realm travel room, and that there's a travel stone, a single travel stone glowing up on the ceiling, and it's just what they need. After they investigate a little bit further, Kratos bulks up and lifts the entire temple, confirming that it's on some sort of axle, but it's chained up. So of course he has to go and break those chains, slaughtering some enemies in the process, and then he finally is able to flip the temple completely, and now they can walk right over and retrieve the travel stone. And with that stone, they then go to the realm between realms on the branches of the world tree, and they see a realm gate, a realm tower, somewhere off into the abyss, and though they were told to never jump from the ledge, they do, and they land on a branch far, far below, and lo and behold, the hidden Jotunheim gate is down there waiting. They use the stone inside this realm tower, and it absorbs the power and rises back to its old spot on the Lake of Nine. And with that, they return to the realm travel rune, activate the Bifrost to open the realm, but nope, denied. The crystal is missing, the one that they need to shine the light of Elfheim through to actually make the realms change. And this crystal is hidden somewhere only Tyr knows where, probably. And in that panel they discovered, they also realized that Tyr had the same golden eyes that Mimir does, only Mimir has just one. But they figured out that Tyr must have used his own eyes in place of that crystal in case he himself needed to travel to the land of the giants. It was the final fail-safe. Mimir needs his second eye to be able to make that happen, which Odin had removed and likely saved as a trophy long ago. And they go to Brock and Sindri to ask if Odin ever had them build a temple that might house such a trophy. And they mention the statue of Thor, the one out there flashing its sack to the lake, the one that the world serpent chomped down earlier. And so we go and blow the horn once more, and we ask the world serpent if we can venture into its belly. And he allows us to search for it. Luckily, the statue isn't fully dissolved in acid, and they're able to retrieve Mimir's lost eye. Kratos pops it back in, and they start heading out of the serpent's mouth. And on their way back out through the snake, they start to see the serpent shake violently, being punched on the outside. As Kratos and crew hold on for dear life, Jormungandr hurls them out from 200 feet in the air as they come slamming onto the ground back near Thamur, the dead giant. And the serpent collapses unconscious in the distance, leaving Kratos and Atreus to wonder what just happened, what attacked him. Was it indigestion or something else entirely? And they put their money on something else. And just then, Freya appears, looking for her son, saying that she senses him somewhere near, and Kratos and Atreus are much more weary and defensive towards her now, knowing that she's the mother of the guy who's been trying to kill them for God knows what. Balder then walks out of the icy river looking for Kratos and Atreus, and is surprised to see his mother there. Balder goes to try to kill his mother for the curse laid upon him, as he sees it, but Kratos intervenes and they start fighting. After the fight gets a little bit testy, Freya starts to restrain them with her vines, and eventually gets Kratos locked in really good as Atreus tries to cut Kratos free. As this is happening, Balder walks up to Atreus and punches him right in the chest, knocking him into Kratos and pushing the air out of his body. And Atreus is covered in blood, but Atreus says it's not his. And you then see Balder with the mistletoe arrow right through his hand as the spell of invulnerability is finally broken, allowing Balder to be washed over with so many sensations all at once. Freya yells in agony from the cliff where she was casting spells and enchants and reanimates the giant's corpse as he grabs Kratos and Atreus and moves them to some other location. Freya begs Kratos to stop, that she can reason with Balder, but Kratos assures her that he's going to kill her. Freya adds that she doesn't care and she'll protect him either way. After that, Balder and Kratos meet again, and this time Balder is in a rush, feeling the cold, the pain, honestly having the time of his life. After a while, Freya has had enough and uses the giant to remove the chisel from his head and slams it into the ground. Kratos jumps and latches onto it and catches Atreus as they head into the sky and continue fighting, and they begin double teaming Balder, and eventually they jump off the chisel and do the last leg of the fight until the giant starts blowing ice breath at them, making Kratos cover up his son as they start to freeze over. But luckily, Atreus has picked up on the ancient tongue and calls out to the world serpent, who answers by lashing out and biting the face of the dead giant, ending his enchantment under Freya, making him collapse yet again. Kratos ends up on top of Balder and bludgeons him into the ground, kind of similar to how he bludgeoned his brother Hercules long ago. Balder isn't dead yet, just defeated, and now Atreus, more humbled and showing some maturity, tells Kratos to let him go. He's defeated, and Kratos tells him not to ever come near him or his son again, and not to touch Freya, who then says, "Hey, I don't need your protection." But Balder then gets into an argument with his mom, and she says she was just trying to protect him, but he's insistent that she must pay for the life that she stole from him, and he wraps his hands around her neck and starts to choke her to death as she allows it to happen. But Kratos steps forward and grabs him and snaps his neck, actually killing him this time. And as he collapses and begins to die, his last words are snow. Freya looks over her dead son and turns instantly into an enemy, saying that she will parade Kratos' corpse for what he did to her son. And she says that he'll never change, that he'll always be a monster. And he says that you don't know me enough then. And she asks, does Atreus know you well enough? Kratos then calls out to Atreus, telling him, listen up. And then he tells him the full truth, most like the big part of the truth, that he is from Sparta, and that he made an oath to a god that cost him his soul, and he killed many deserving and many who didn't deserve that, and that he killed his own father. Atreus asks if this god stuff always ends this way, children killing their parents, and Kratos assures him that they will be the gods they choose to be. God, I hope that's true. Freya leaves with Balder in her arms, and she's going to be a problem, I feel, as well. They get back to Tyr's temple, now with Mimir and his two eyes, and they open up the realm to Jotunheim using his face to magnify the Bifrost, and They leave the head with Brock and Sindri as they finally make their way into Jotunheim. Near the bridge towards a large hall, Kratos stops and unwraps the bandages around his chain marks, saying that he now has no more to hide from his son, and then gives Atreus the bag of his mother's ashes. And they pass through this great hall, possibly the same hall that Odin and Tyr met with the giants long ago, and it's riddled with inscriptions, probably from the info they've learned from their foresight about Ragnarok. And on the way out, Atreus touches a wall without really thinking, and it crumbles into sand to reveal a huge mural depicting his mother Faye with the axe. She's meeting with a bunch of giants, and it also has Kratos and Atreus meeting the world serpent for the first time. It has the giant Thamor, the dragon they fought in the mountain, and it even has the fight with Balder, which literally just happened. And they realize that the giants foresaw their entire journey. Kratos tells them this isn't their story, but it's Atreus' story. Kratos realizes that he isn't the only parent with a secret, that Faye was actually a giant of Jotunheim and no mortal at all, and that she also knew the path they needed to take, the trees they needed to cut down in order to spread the ashes from the highest peak in all the realms, and what it actually meant to make all of that happen, triggering Ragnarok essentially. Balder's last words were snow, and it's believed that his death is what triggers Fimbulwinter, 3 years of cold followed by Ragnarok. So that was like his last observation. It's snowing. His death brought the snow. And why would the giants want to do that? Is it vengeance on the gods for their genocide? Maybe, since they see the future and they see so far ahead that there's still some unknown reason why they're essentially asking for the apocalypse. But maybe these are questions that will be answered in Ragnarok. Kratos figures out that Odin never meant to send Balder after him, but was instead sent to find Faye. Probably Odin's own way to send his son after another giant to kill him and continue on his quest eradicating giants from all 9 realms. By promising Balder maybe this person with the axe could help you feel something and break the curse. And it takes us back to when Balder first knocked on Kratos' door, saying how his kind was supposed to be bigger, so much more enlightened, so much smarter. Balder was instead mistaking Kratos for a giant of Jotunheim and had no idea of his Greek origins, though at the time Kratos assumed that that's what he had meant, that somehow Balder knew his past. And when Balder said no, no, no after Kratos punched him, he really was deeply disappointed, seeing that Kratos would not be the man to finally make him feel something. But in the end, it was Atreus that would break that spell. Atreus being the person that Balder was looking for, leaving Balder vulnerable to be killed and triggering Ragnarok. And all those tapestries on the wall in Jotunheim are about Ragnarok, so this really is Atreus' story at this point, and I expect his role to be absolutely huge. I wonder if we'll play as him. I kind of want to, and I don't want to, but it all depends on the why we're playing as him, right? As Kratos looks over this mural, a slight breeze from the gods sweeps through and moves a cloth that's on the wall, just enough to reveal a hidden part of the mural, which shows Atreus holding a dead body, and it looks somewhat like Kratos, but not entirely. There's some notable differences that seem non-accidental, so I'm hoping not. However, Atreus says we're so close to the end now. And Kratos, looking forebodingly at that image, says, yes, we are so close to the end. It's then covered again by the cloth as they step outside, only to see a sea of dead giants just covering the land all the way to the horizon in all directions. Maybe it was done by Thor. I think there was a time where he snuck in during some sort of wedding, even after Tyr disconnected the temple to Jotunheim. So maybe that Thor is responsible for that mass genocide you see there, under the will of Odin. And it's a terrible sight. You almost think it's mountains until you look closely. I don't think I even noticed it on my first playthrough. I'm like, whoa, those are corpses like 2 or 3 times into it. But they've completed their journey, and as they stand on the highest peak in all 9 realms, they finally spread Faye's ashes. On the way back toward the temple, Atreus mentions his confusion about the mural, saying that the giants seem to know him as Loki, And Kratos kind of understands where that's coming from and explains that Faye wanted that name, but he chose Atreus after a Spartan warrior he once knew that maintained a positive spirit and strong heart in battle, and a great fighter, and someone who managed to keep his true identity intact in the face of war and brutality, which can't be said for most people, I'm sure. Atreus says he's happy with the name he got. And we'll talk about the implications of his Loki identity in a few minutes. Upon returning to Mimir, they finally return home in the wild woods and immediately head to bed. And in his sleep, Atreus has a vision of Thor showing up at their house once Fimbulwinter ends. And when they awake, Atreus felt like it was real, but Kratos says we'll have to worry about that when we get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Worry about it tomorrow. Thus brings a close to God of War of 2018. Some of the next stuff that I'll talk about real quick is slightly spoilery. So if you don't really want to hear where Ragnarok may be going, I would probably tune out now, if you haven't yet, from my much longer than expected rant and summary of Kratos' life. With the reveal at the end of Atreus being called Loki by the giants, this has a lot of implications. First, it means that Loki, he's the son of Laufey, guardian of the giants, as well as his father Farbati, which means something like great striker. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but it also means that Atreus may very well be a shapeshifter, being that, it's on the top of his mind. Right when he heard that he's a god, his first question, can I become an animal? And in Norse mythology, Loki is the father of Fenrir, the giant wolf. Hel is his daughter and future goddess of death, ruler of Helheim. And Jormungandr, the world serpent. We said earlier that the world serpent fought Thor in the future, and it was so powerful that it sent him back in time. So perhaps the grown-up serpent is back in time talking to his own father when Atreus was a child, as well as Grandpa Kratos. And I think it's so cool to refer to Kratos as Farbati, who has always had a place in Norse mythology as Loki's father, and the name meaning great striker, which fits Kratos. And it's just like Kratos found his way into Greek mythology, we're now seeing what the Vikings referred to him as. Same person, different name, different time. Now, who the hell blew the horn? Future Loki for some reason? I mean, I kind of hope it doesn't get too wonky with time travel. I'm always like, be careful when it comes to time travel, But could it have been Heimdall, Angerboda, another giant who lives? And we'll learn much more about her. Would she have been able to travel to Midgard like that? And why? Why would anyone need to talk with the world serpent? Remember, this was when Atreus fainted and Kratos took him back for Freya for help, which triggered some sort of strange storm. That rage that he felt towards Modi triggered a weird storm before he fainted, just like the weather changed when he was being cocky and arrogant on their way back up the mountain after he learned that he was a god. So I believe whatever reason the horn was blown for, I think it probably had to do with Atreus, and I also don't think it was Balder or Thor or any Aesir at all for that matter, being that they murdered as many giants as possible and tried to kill Jormungandr, so I doubt it was any Aesir. Perhaps someone sensed this energy and came to ask the serpent what he saw. I don't know. I really don't know. But now for the final question, I will leave you all with this. The theme that has been present since almost the very beginning. Will Kratos and Atreus at long last break free of the cycle of patricide, or will Atreus find himself in a position where his father must die in order for Atreus to live? Kratos already alluded to that as they spoke of Freya's sudden animosity toward them in the wake of Balder's death. Kratos said that he himself would happily die if it meant that Atreus would live. And with the way Kratos observed that hidden part of the mural, I mean, the seeds are there for something bad to happen, or maybe they'll succeed in breaking that cycle and truly being the gods they choose to be. It could go either way, I'd say. But let's just say that I'm desperately telling myself that nothing can kill Kratos. He's escaped death so many times, but will it finally catch him and hold him for good? But regardless of what's to come, as Fimbulwinter comes to a close, I also believe that we are not ready for what we're about to see in God of War Ragnarok, dropping Wednesday, November 9th. It actually comes out for me on the PS4 at 10 p.m. Tuesday night on the 8th, and I'm feeling like we owe Kratos and Atreus a late night of diving into this game, so I plan to stream it as soon as possible. So join me live on twitch.tv/OdinGrim Tuesday, November 8th at about 9:30 p.m. Mountain Time, and we will gear up, sharpen our weapons, we'll bundle up, and we will load up Ragnarok for the first time. Before it becomes available for me to play, I plan to take a few whacks at Sigrun, the Queen of the Valkyries, on the hardest mode in New Game Plus, just to help warm up for the challenges that are sure to find us in Ragnarok. I can't believe it's here, and I'm still clearly not ready. This is Odin Grimm, no relation to Odin the Allfather, but this is Odin Grimm with Ghost Data, part of the Bloodmead Sanctum, and I will see you soon. Thank you.